Military history is filled with tales of bravery and strategy, but some deaths stand out for their sheer horror and tragedy. From brutal ambushes to fiery betrayals, the stories of soldiers meeting unimaginable fates reveal the dark, grim realities of war, reminding us that courage often comes at a devastating cost. If you think history is all dusty old dates and stiff uniforms, let me introduce you to one of the most infamous and blood-soaked moments in American military history: the death of Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn, or, as it is dramatically known, Custer's Last Stand. Picture this. It is June 1876. The Montana plains are shimmering under the summer sun, and Custer is leading the 7th Cavalry deep into territory dominated by Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors. Bold? Absolutely. Reckless? History would later argue yes. Custer had a reputation for daring charges and flashy military maneuvers, but here, daring collided violently with reality. Outnumbered and underestimating the skill and numbers of his adversaries, he and his men found themselves surrounded. Accounts suggest that the fight quickly devolved into chaotic hand-to-hand combat, a brutal scramble that would leave Custer and all the troops under his direct command dead. It was not a dramatic last stand for the cameras. It was a horrifying battlefield scene of violence, panic, and sheer survival instinct, with the outcome almost preordained by overconfidence and tactical misjudgment. What makes this moment in history so endlessly fascinating is the mix of myth, legend, and hard fact. Almost immediately after the battle, newspapers and storytellers painted Custer as a tragic hero, a larger-than-life figure fighting valiantly against overwhelming odds. Statues went up, books were written, and countless debates erupted over whether he was a brave visionary or a reckless fool. The native warriors, on the other hand, were often reduced to shadows in these tales, even though it was their strategic prowess and sheer courage that sealed the outcome. In truth, this was not some cinematic showdown with heroics neatly choreographed. It was messy, brutal, and undeniably human. People died screaming, charging, and defending their homes and lives, and the landscape of the Great Plains was littered with the tragic consequences of misjudgment and resistance. Modern historians have since pieced together accounts from native witnesses, archaeological evidence, and Custer's own writings to understand exactly what happened. The verdict: a catastrophic defeat for the U.S. Army, and a decisive, if bloody, demonstration of Native American resistance during a period of aggressive westward expansion. Despite the seriousness of the events, there is a strange allure to Custer's story. It is the combination of flamboyant personality, dramatic battlefield failure, and the swirl of myth that has kept people talking for nearly 150 years. Movies, documentaries, books, and even video games have retold the story in countless ways, often exaggerating heroism and villainy for dramatic effect. But beneath all the legends lies a sobering reality. The deaths at Little Bighorn were violent, sudden, and absolute. Custer's life ended in the chaos he helped create, alongside more than 200 of his men, while native warriors demonstrated extraordinary tactical skill, courage, and coordination. This event is not just a tale of one man's hubris. It is a vivid reminder of how miscalculation, underestimation, and ignorance of one's opponents can have deadly consequences. And while history may remember Custer as the man who fell at Little Bighorn, the battlefield itself, and the people who fought there, tell a far richer story of courage, struggle, and the brutal realities of conflict on the American frontier. Sultan Osman II ascended the Ottoman throne in 1618 at the remarkably young age of 14, inheriting an empire that was both vast and turbulent. From the very start, Osman was ambitious, intelligent, and determined to assert his authority in a system dominated by entrenched military elites, particularly the Janissaries, the formidable elite infantry corps that had long been a pillar of Ottoman power. Unlike many of his predecessors, Osman was not content to remain a ceremonial figurehead, content to let advisors and military officers make key decisions. He sought to reshape the empire according to his vision. His focus quickly turned to the Janissaries, whose discipline had declined, whose loyalty was questionable and whose influence over politics was becoming dangerously unchecked. Osman believed that strengthening the army and restoring order was essential not only for defending the empire, but also for securing his own rule. By 1622, Osman had grown increasingly frustrated with the Janissaries' resistance to reform. He had ambitious plans to form a new, loyal army composed of Anatolian recruits, bypassing the Janissaries entirely. This initiative, however, was interpreted as a direct threat by the Janissary Corps, who saw it as a challenge to their long-standing privileges and power. The tension escalated rapidly. The young sultan perhaps underestimated the depth of their resentment, and when the Janissaries decided to act, there was no turning back. In May of that year, a violent revolt erupted within the imperial palace itself, led by the very troops Osman had hoped to reform. The revolt was swift and merciless. The Janissaries stormed the palace, confronted Osman, and deposed him from the throne in a shocking display of military power. What followed was even more tragic. Osman II, a ruler who had dreamed of reform and renewal, found himself at the mercy of those he had once commanded. In a brutal and public act of execution, he was strangled by his own soldiers, marking one of the rare instances in Ottoman history where a reigning sultan was killed at the hands of his military. His death was not only a personal tragedy but also a political shockwave, underscoring the extraordinary influence of the Janissaries within the empire and the inherent risks faced by rulers who sought to challenge entrenched power structures. Historians note that Osman's demise illustrated the fragile balance between youthful ambition and political reality in the Ottoman system, where even a sultan's authority could be violently contested if it threatened the interests of powerful factions. The legacy of Osman II's short reign is a sobering reminder of both the potential and peril of leadership. His vision of reform and modernization was never realized. Yet his determination reflected a level of courage and foresight rare for someone so young. The manner of his death, though horrifying, became a symbol of the internal challenges faced by the Ottoman Empire during a period of military and political instability. Osman's story is frequently cited in historical studies as a cautionary tale about the dangers of confronting powerful institutions without adequate support, and about the vulnerabilities of youthful rulers in complex and often unforgiving political landscapes. Ultimately, Sultan Osman II's life and death remain a poignant illustration of ambition, reform, and tragedy, offering a vivid portrait of a young sultan caught between the ideals of progress and the realities of entrenched power. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto was not just any Japanese naval officer. He was the mastermind behind Japan's early naval strategy in World War II, including the attack on Pearl Harbor. By 1943, Yamamoto had become a symbol of Japan's naval power and strategic brilliance, making him a prime target for the Allies. In April of that year, the United States carried out one of the most daring missions of the war, an operation that would go down in history as Operation Vengeance. The mission was extraordinary not just for its precision but also for the audacity behind it. U.S. intelligence had intercepted Japanese communications and decrypted them, discovering Yamamoto's exact travel plans. He would be flying across the Solomon Islands for an inspection tour. This was the kind of opportunity that military planners dream of, a chance to remove the strategic brain behind the Japanese Navy, a man whose decisions had caused devastating losses for Allied forces across the Pacific. The stakes could not have been higher, and the mission was treated with a combination of meticulous planning and sheer nerve. On April 18, 1943, a squadron of 16 Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighters took off from Guadalcanal, flying hundreds of miles over open ocean to intercept Yamamoto's plane at a precise location and time. The pilots had to navigate without the modern navigation aids we take for granted today, relying on maps, timing, and coordination to reach the Japanese flight path. Yamamoto's transport, a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, was accompanied by Japanese fighter escorts, though they were no match for the speed and coordination of the American P-38s. When the two forces met in the skies above Bougainville, a brief but decisive battle unfolded. The U.S. pilots executed the interception perfectly, and the bomber carrying Admiral Yamamoto was shot down. Accounts describe the aircraft crashing into the dense jungle, engulfed in flames, with all aboard killed instantly. Yamamoto, along with his staff, had no chance to escape. The carefully executed strike was over in minutes, but its impact would echo for the rest of the war. The death of Admiral Yamamoto was more than just the loss of a high-ranking officer. It represented a psychological and strategic blow to the Japanese military, a disruption to the command structure that reverberated throughout their forces. Yamamoto was a charismatic leader whose tactical vision had shaped Japanese naval operations, and his absence left a gap that could not easily be filled. For the United States, Operation Vengeance was a triumph of intelligence and precision, a demonstration of the growing capabilities of Allied forces in the Pacific theater. Yet, despite the success, the operation also highlighted the stark realities of war. The deliberate targeting and killing of an individual, no matter how strategic, carries moral weight. The fiery destruction of Yamamoto's plane served as a grim reminder of the lethal stakes of aerial warfare. Today, Admiral Yamamoto's death is remembered not as a sensational tale of a plane shot down, but as a pivotal moment in World War II that combined intelligence, courage, and calculated risk. It shows how warfare had evolved into a game of precision and foresight, where a single mission could alter the course of entire campaigns. The pilots who flew the interception were lauded for their bravery, and historians continue to study Operation Vengeance as an example of the careful orchestration of modern military strategy. Yamamoto's demise reminds us that in war, brilliance and boldness often come with vulnerability, and that even the most revered military minds are not immune to the sudden and deadly realities of combat. The story endures not only as history, but as a sobering testament to the complexities and consequences of war, where planning, skill, and chance converge in moments of irreversible impact. Vasily Ivanovich Chapayev, a name that still echoes through Russian history, was more than just a soldier. He became a symbol of courage, leadership, and the chaotic turbulence of the Russian Civil War. Born in 1887 into a peasant family, Chapayev rose from humble beginnings to command a division in the Red Army, earning a reputation for boldness, decisiveness, and an uncanny ability to inspire his troops. By 1919, the civil war between the Bolshevik Reds and the White forces loyal to the old regime had intensified. Chapayev found himself at the center of a struggle that would define not only his life, but also the mythos of revolutionary Russia. On September 5, 1919, Chapayev's divisional headquarters near Elbishchensk faced an unexpected and devastating attack by White forces, largely composed of Ural Cossacks. The ambush was sudden, well-coordinated, and catastrophic, with communication lines cut and Red units thrown into confusion. The orderly command structure Chapayev had painstakingly built dissolved in the chaos. Accounts of what happened next diverge, blending fact, legend, and Soviet-era embellishment. But the core of the story remains chilling and poignant. The widely accepted version holds that Chapayev, refusing to surrender and determined to escape, attempted to cross the icy waters of the Ural River. Under enemy fire, he struggled in the freezing currents, reportedly trapped and shot at while fighting to stay afloat. His ultimate fate, whether drowned, shot, or a combination of both, remains uncertain. Yet it is this very ambiguity that elevated him from a military commander to a near-mythical figure in Russian consciousness. Historians note that no body was ever recovered, allowing multiple interpretations and stories to flourish, each contributing to his legend. Beyond the dramatic circumstances of his death, Chapayev's legacy was amplified by literature and cinema. Dmitry Furmanov's novel, chronicling Chapayev's life, and the subsequent 1934 Soviet film portrayed him as the quintessential revolutionary hero, fearless, strategic, and devoted to the Bolshevik cause. These portrayals, while dramatized, were grounded in real events and reflected the genuine admiration of his troops and contemporaries. was not merely a tragic military loss, it became a narrative device that embodied the struggle, sacrifice, and unpredictability of the Civil War. His story also highlights the human dimension of war, the courage it takes to stand against overwhelming odds, the split-second decisions that determine life or death, and the stark reality that in times of conflict, even the bravest leaders are vulnerable. For scholars and enthusiasts alike, Chapayev represents the intersection of history and legend, a reminder that historical figures are often shaped as much by the stories told about them as by their actual deeds. The fascination with his death endures not because of the violence alone, but because of the broader questions it raises: how heroism is defined, how history is remembered, and how individuals navigate extraordinary circumstances. Chapayev's struggle in the icy river under fire becomes emblematic of the broader human experience during the Civil War, a turbulent, unpredictable period where ideals, fear, and survival collided in stark relief. In the end, Chapayev's life and death invite reflection on the nature of heroism, the power of narrative, and the way collective memory transforms historical events into enduring symbols. Even a century later, the image of Chapayev facing the river, resolute and defiant in the face of imminent death, continues to resonate, reminding us that history is not only a record of events but also a tapestry of human courage, myth, and remembrance. His story encourages reflection on the sacrifices demanded by war and the ways in which memory and legend preserve the deeds of individuals long after they are gone, capturing the imagination and inspiring those who seek to understand the human side of history. Chapayev remains a figure whose life and death blur the lines between historical fact and cultural myth, leaving a legacy that continues to be studied, debated, and remembered with reverence and awe. Imagine being a Roman soldier in 9 AD, marching confidently through dense, unfamiliar forests in Germania, certain that your discipline, armor, and training would carry the day. You are part of a massive expeditionary force led by Publius Quinctilius Varus, a general who believed Germania was ripe for Roman order and governance. The plan seemed straightforward: march, establish authority, collect taxes, and bring these wild lands under the steady, organized hand of Rome. Unbeknownst to Varus and his legions, the local Germanic tribes, led by Arminius, a crafty and former ally who had spent years under Roman tutelage, were preparing a masterclass in ambush warfare. Arminius knew the terrain like the back of his hand. Swamps, narrow paths, and thick forests were all tools he could wield against the mightiest army in the world. The Romans, accustomed to open plains where formations like the Testudo could dominate, were suddenly at a disadvantage in the shadowy forest. Confident arrogance met cunning strategy in a clash that would leave a permanent scar on Roman pride. As the legions trudged deeper into the Teutoburg forest, the ambush was sprung with brutal precision. Germanic warriors attacked from every side, raining down arrows and driving the Romans into muddy marshes. The dense forest broke up formations, scattering soldiers into small, isolated groups that could be easily overwhelmed. Panic spread quickly. Trained veterans accustomed to the order and predictability of battle suddenly found themselves in chaos and altered the course of Roman ambitions in the region. The aftermath of Teutoburg Forest changed the Roman Empire forever. The psychological shock reverberated through Rome. Emperor Augustus reportedly was so distressed that he would wander the palace muttering, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." Rome abandoned plans for immediate expansion east of the Rhine, shifting its focus to securing and fortifying existing borders. The battle also elevated Arminius to legendary status among the Germanic tribes, cementing his reputation as the leader who could unite fragmented groups to challenge the most powerful empire of the age. The forest itself became a symbol, a place where strategy, local knowledge, and cunning overcame sheer military might. For the Romans, it served as a humbling reminder that no amount of armor, discipline, or experience could guarantee victory against an enemy who knew the land and was willing to exploit it to the fullest. Teutoburg Forest remains a stark lesson in history. Arrogance and underestimation can be as deadly as any sword, and even the greatest empire can be brought low by strategy, terrain, and a bit of clever betrayal. In the end, the story of the Roman soldiers at Teutoburg Forest is both tragic and captivating. It combines the horror of a brutal ambush with the intrigue of political maneuvering and battlefield cunning. The massacre of Varus's legions shows the limits of empire, the dangers of ignoring local intelligence, and the human cost of military overconfidence. Even today, the name Teutoburg Forest evokes images of Roman legions trapped and overwhelmed, a tale of caution for generals, historians, and history lovers alike. It is a story of strategy, horror, and enduring lessons about power, pride, and the unforgiving hand of fate.